Alright, today we're going to learn how to factor out a common monomial from an expression. So our target today is I can factor out a common monomial. Here are the steps for factoring out a common monomial. First, you find the greatest common factor for all the numbers and put it outside the parentheses. Next, you find the greatest common factor for each variable. It will be the lowest power of the variable. All terms must have the variable for it to be part of the common monomial. Put these outside with your GCF that you found from step 1. Now once you have your common monomial, you have to find out what's left over. So inside the parentheses for each term, put what you would multiply the outside term by to get the original term. So we are actually doing the opposite of distributing. We're pulling out what each factor has in common. So let's look at some examples. Alright, my first example is 18 n to the second minus 3. So first I look at the numbers, 18 and 3, and I see that 3 will divide 18. So your greatest common factor between 18 and 3 is 3. Now I look at my variable, n squared, and I don't have any n's here, so there is no common variable. I'm ready to find out what's left inside my parentheses. So what times 3 will give me 18n squared? Well, 6 times 3 will give me 18, and I need the n squared. And then what times 3 will give me a negative 3? Negative 1. Now you can always check it by distributing your common monomial out in front. 3 times 6n squared is 18n squared, and 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Alright, second problem. Negative 42 and 48. So I have to find the greatest common factor. They have a 2 in common, but that's not the biggest one. As you go through all the factors of 42 and 48, you see that they have a 6 in common. 6 times 7 will give you 42, and 6 times 8 will give you 48. Now I look at the variables. This one has a b, this one does not, so they have no variables in common. So I'm ready to find out what's left inside. So first I say what times 6 will give me negative 42, and that's negative 7. And I need to bring down my variable b. And then what times 6 will give me 48? It's a positive 8. So you're left with negative 7b plus 8 inside the parentheses. Alright, let's get ones that, instead of binomials, let's look at some trinomial examples. Alright, number 3 says negative 35v squared plus 49v minus 7. So when I look at the numbers, 35, 49, and 7, I see that my lowest number divides both of those, so that is my greatest common factor. You cannot have a common factor that's bigger than your smaller number because it won't divide it evenly. Alright, so I pull out a 7. You see here that they have the negative in front. You can pull out a negative 7 also. So in this one, I'll just pull out the 7. I look at the variables. I got a v squared, a v, and no v. So they don't have any v's in common, so I'm ready to find out what's left. So what times 7 gives me negative 35v squared? That would be negative 5v squared. What times 7 will give me 49v? Well, that would be 7v. And then what times 7 gives me negative 7? Negative 1. So if I distribute this, 7 times negative 5v squared gives me negative 35v squared. 7 times 7v will give me 49v, and 7 times negative 1 will give me a negative 7. So you can always check your work. Alright, number 4 is another trinomial. Again, we have that negative out in front, so this time I'll factor out the negative. You can factor out the negative, but you don't have to. I count both answers as being correct. Alright, so if I look at 24, 56, and 80, I have to find the greatest common factor. So as I look at all the factors of 24, I got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and I hear 8, and I say, oh, 56 is divisible by 8. 80 is divisible by 8. So that's my biggest one that I can use. because 12 isn't divisible by both of those, and 24 is not divisible by both of those. So I pull out a -8. I got an x squared, an x, and no x, so there's no variables in common yet. Now I'm ready to find what's left over. -8 times what will give me -24x to the 5th, and that would be 3x to the 5th. And then what times -8 will give me a 56x? That would be a -7x. And then what times -8 will give me a +80? That would be a -10. So if I distribute this, -8 times 3x to the 5th is -24x to the 5th. -8 times -7x is a +56x. And -8 times a -10 is a +80. All right, when I look down at number 5, I see that I have more variables, so I'll probably have something in common with the variables this time. So I look at my numbers first, 5, 8, and 9, and they don't have any common factors. 5 is prime, so these would have to be divisible by 5, and they're not. So there's no number to pull out in front. So I move to the variables. I have a u to the 3rd, a u squared, and a u. They all have a u in common, so I want to pull out the u with the lowest power, and that would be this u to the 1st. So they have a u in common. Then I look, this term has a v, this term has a v, and this term has a v, so they all have a v in common. Now I'm ready to see what's left over. So what times uv will give me 5u to the 3rd v? Well, I need 1 times 5 will give me 5. I got u, I need u to the 3rd, and when we multiply like bases, we add the power. So if I have 1, then I need 2 more. And since I have this v here, I don't need any more v's, so this term does not need a v. Now I move to the next one. 1 times -8 will give me -8. I got a u, but I need a u squared, so what am I going to add? I need 1 more. U to the 1st times u to the 1st will give me u to the 2nd. This has a v, and this one only needs 1 v, so I don't need any v's in my leftovers. Alright, and now I look at the positive 9 uv. Well, I have a 1 here, so what do I multiply by 1 to get 9? 9. And since I have uv on the outside, I don't need the uv on the inside. So now if you distribute this, uv times 5 u squared will give you 5 u to the 1st plus u to the 2nd will give you the 3rd, and v. Multiply uv times -8u, and you'll get -8 u squared v. Multiply uv by 9, and you'll get 9 uv. Alright, let's look at the last one. When I look at the numbers, -7, 8, 9, and 10, -7 is prime, so all of these numbers would have to be divisible by 7 to have any common factors, and they are not. So there's no common number to pull out. So now I look at my variables. For my n's, I have an n to the 4th, I have an n to the 5th, an n to the 5th, and an n to the 7th. So the lowest power is n to the 4th. For p's, I have a p squared, a p, and another p squared. So the lowest power of p is 1, so I pull out 1p. Now I'm ready to see what's left over. So I have n to the 4th p. What do I multiply by to get -7 n to the 4th p squared? Well, 1 times -7 will give me the -7. The n to the 4th is already there. I have 1p, but I need a p squared, so I'll need a second p. Now the next term, what times 1 will give me 8? That would be a +8. I got an n to the 4th, but I need an n to the 5th, so I need 1 more n. And I have a p outside, and I only need 1 p in my term, so I don't need any p's in my leftovers. So I move to the next term. 9 n to the 5th pm, so I need the 9, so plus 9. I have an n to the 4th, I need an n to the 5th, so I'll need another n. I have a p on the outside, and I only need 1 p in my term, so I don't need any of them. And this one has another variable m, so I'll put that. So 9nm. And then the last term, I'm going to multiply n to the 4th p by 10 to get the 10. I got an n to the 4th, but I need an n to the 7th, so I need 3 more n's. And then I got a p squared. I have a p, but I need a p squared, so I need an extra p. So that's your final answer. N to the 4th p times -7p plus 8n plus 9nm plus 10n to the 3rd p. I will look at some more examples tomorrow in class, and we will look at some where you can pull out numbers and variables together. So we'll work more on our target of I can pull out a common monomial, or I can factor out a common monomial.